move on to the 1-3 Miami Dolphins coming off of a loss to the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts ended up beating the Dolphins 27-17. They're taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at 3-1. The Buccaneers are coming off of a great victory against the New England Patriots, where my boy Tom Brady pants Belichick again. But who you guys got winning this game?
The Bucs are going to win this game, and
Yes.
right now the point spread is Bucs laying 10 points, and I wouldn't be surprised if they cover that. This Dolphins defense is great. Like, we can all agree that it's a great defense, but the fact of the matter is when your offense can't just generate any sort of positive plays and positive yardage, and your defense is hung out to dry for about 35 minutes of total time on the field like it was last week against the Indianapolis Colts, yeah, you're going to get burned because you're running out of gas. And I think this is exactly what's going to happen. I think the Bucs this is going to be a bounce back spot, and then if you look ahead down the Bucs schedule, it's pretty cupcake, especially after the bye week. But we saw it on Sunday Night Football. We really didn't hit on it at the top of the show, but like there were times where Brady clearly missed Gronk in the game on Sunday. Like, a couple of those throws, Gronk makes that with his eyes closed. I think this is going to be a perfect game for Brady and Cameron Brate to get on the same page. I think Antonio Brown could have a great game. I think every skill position player on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is going to have themselves a day. The Dolphins, Austin Jackson is a problem, and he is one of the offensive linemen for the Dolphins. He was taken the same year Tua Tagovailoa was drafted. He was drafted, I believe it was in the 15th overall out of USC. He was a developmental guy that some of the scouts were saying, and you clearly saw that against the Indianapolis Colts. He barely blocked anybody. He gave up a costly strip sack fumble for a touchdown to the Colts. I think Darius Leonard came up with it. This is a bad offensive unit. It's a bad team right now. There were reports that Stephen Ross is really kicking the tires on pulling a trigger and finally just unloading draft picks to Houston to get Deshaun Watson. And at this point, I think he would be justified because he gave, Chris Grier, the general manager, and Brian Flores, the head coach, the keys to the car to rebuild this team. And like the first year, it looked okay. You saw promise. The second year, okay, like we're like about a 10-win team. And now it is just a dumpster fire. It is so bad. Tua can't stay healthy, which drove me fucking nuts on draft night. Austin Jackson, none of these draft picks on the offensive line have panned out. And we don't even know who's calling the plays because this team has two offensive coordinators and nobody is just going to come out and say who's actually calling the plays. I think a lot of eyes need to start looking at Brian Flores and wondering why you can't retain a coaching staff for more than 1 year. DeGuglielmo, the offensive line coach, he left after a year. He went up to New England, I believe. Chan Gailey was an offensive coordinator for 1 year. O'Day, he was the offensive coordinator his first year as a head coach. There is just so much turnover in this coaching staff right now that if we finish dead last behind the Jets, I wouldn't be surprised. If the Jets rattle off a couple of wins and we're ending up in the basement, I would not be surprised one bit. And if they lose, which they probably are against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, there needs to be changes made in the coaching staff. Not saying Brian Flores needs to get fired, but you need to figure out an offensive identity because you only had about 30 rushing yards between two running backs total in the game last week. You ran, I think, like 40-something plays, 240 total yards of offense. It is freaking ridiculous.
Yeah. And I mean, listen, like, I don't understand how Ross can watch the game on Sunday and see Jacoby Brissett out there and still not pull the trigger on Deshaun Watson. Like, I mean, we all have a soft spot in New England for Jacoby Brissett, but to be real, I think he looks like a bottom three quarterback in the NFL that isn't a rookie. And this goes beyond the offensive line concerns. So, Puma, quick question for you in regards to the whole Watson thing. Like, how viable is that? Because at the end of the day, we've heard reports about this for months now. It seems to get heated up in the summertime, then it goes away early on this year, then it goes away. Is just another one of those like news cycles with Watson, or is there actually some fire behind this? this.
I think it's legit. I think at this point the Houston Texans are tired of marking him inactive every week and still paying him a paycheck. I mean, it would be really nice to have him starting instead of Davis Mills right now. But you have Watson inactive. He wants out. It's been made pretty clear through a couple other people that are reporting this. Albright has been all over this. Ben Albright at Albright NFL on Twitter, saying that the only team he will waive his no trade clause for is the Miami Dolphins because he wants to get back with his buddy Will Fuller. And I don't really think it's an accident that Will Fuller has not played a whole lot. Like, yeah, he broke his finger in this game against the Colts, but he missed a game because of a personal issue. Nobody really knows what the issue was. And if it's like legit, like a family thing or something with him, I hope everything's fine. But I don't think it's an accident that he has not really performed at all for the Miami Dolphins. I think this is legit. I think Stephen Ross wants to make a change. And I think if they lose against the Buccaneers, I would not be surprised if finally they pull the trigger and just unload draft picks and a couple of players. Because clearly Chris Greer and Brian Flores have not hit on any of these draft picks right now, short of Christian Wilkins.
Conspiracy time, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's something that Stephen Ross knows or somebody knows about Deshaun Watson where if he is traded to a team where he could be inserted to play right away that he's just going to get slapped with the exempt list at that point?
No, only because I think because of the new CBA, they really limited the criteria of what Goodell can put a player on the exempt list for. So in the past, pre-new CBA, Goodell would have put him on the exempt list in a cocaine heartbeat. Like, he wouldn't need a whole lot. Like, you New England fans, you guys know that perfectly well, that he was judge, jury, and executioner, and you didn't really need a whole lot to do anything. But now with the new CBA, it's a lot more tighter to do this. We all know that obviously the criminal investigation is ongoing. The civil suit is still ongoing, but that's not going to be solved until possibly the offseason at this point. No one really has a timetable on the criminal investigation. So I think it's a real chance, unless like a bombshell comes out after he's traded to whatever team, that he could be put on the exempt list. But as it stands right now, I think he would be eligible to play the rest of the year on a new team.
Interesting. There's got to be something that's holding that up that maybe we haven't heard of at this point, because I feel like the trigger would have been pulled at this point. I
think at this point it's just coming down to what kind of protections the Houston Texans are willing to do for draft picks. Like, are they going to fork back over like a couple of, like, a first rounder, the second rounders, and maybe a player if Deshaun Watson does end up on an exempt list? I think that is like the brass tacks and what is holding up this potential trade between Watson and whatever the suitors are. I think it's really just coming down to draft pick and player protection for the people involved in the trade.
So real quick, before I get into what I'm going to say about this, because I'll be quick about it, does Deshaun Watson get traded before the trade deadline this year?
Yes.
To the Miami Dolphins.
Yep. I think if they get blown out by Tampa Bay, and I don't think the schedule really gets any easier for the Dolphins, Stephen Ross is going to have the enemies at the gates demanding a whole lot of change. I think you can stave off the heathens by pulling off this trade and saving your fan base.
Yeah, same here.
What do you think, Jay?
I think. I'm sorry. I take it back. I do not believe he's going to get traded before the trade deadline, just because I've seen this seesaw like a few times now. Like, I don't understand why you would wait till now to pay him money, like money that you're just wasting, pissing away, and then finally trade him. You could have done this back in the summertime and moved off of him. I think they're going to hold out till their off season, and essentially his stock is going to be, the way I see it playing out is they're going to essentially, get a resolution on the cases. His stock will essentially rise back to where it should be, and they'll unload him at that point before the draft.
I share that sentiment. I think that he will not be traded. I think that the Texans would be just, again, still selling low at this point on Deshaun Watson, and I think that let everything play out for the year. He's not, they're paying him either way, and we'll see what happens in the offseason. But
plot twist, I'm sorry. what if they wait for the Dolphins to keep losing? Because at that point, like, Deshaun Watson would elevate this entire offense, right? They could potentially go on a run and win a couple of games and dilute some of the draft picks, at least for next year. If they hold tight and, like, don't pull the trigger on a trade and maybe wait for them to keep losing a couple of games, then that might be when they dump the trade and actually pull the trigger and make it happen.
I think the Dolphins would have to pay them exactly what they want for that to happen. There's going to be no coming down from it. You know, we'll see how it plays out. But real quick, I'll be brief. I really do think Tom Brady missed Rob Gronkowski in that game last week. Like you, Puma, I think this is a perfect get-right game for that Bucs offense, passing game to involve Cameron Brate, O.J. Howard, Chris Godwin. I'll get everybody back involved. I too, like the Bucs to win outright, laying the 10 points to beat the Dolphins by more than 10. My boy agrees with me. He's taking the Bucs as well.
Woo! Let's go, Shark.
Ow.
Yeah, I'm going to be brief as well. I think this is the perfect get-right game for the Buccaneers. I think their season starts now. I mean, so much of it was built up towards Week 4, and everybody was looking ahead to Week 4 and trying to get that out of the way. I'm so glad it's over. I'm so glad Brady won. I think they can move on and focus on the rest of the football season. Now, the concern for me is that secondary is just god-awful. It's atrocious. I haven't seen a secondary that bad in a long time, and a lot of it has to do with injuries. I think the Buccaneers will be able to win this handedly, but I would not be shocked if Jacoby Brissett and the Miami Dolphins had some success moving the ball up and down the field. So give me the Buccaneers somewhere in the realm of like a 32 to 24, maybe 21 kind of game. And then the last thing about the whole Deshaun Watson thing I want to close out on is, have you guys heard some of the stories that Rusty Hardin, Watson's attorney, has been contacted by a few teams to give them some sort of indication of where this thing is going, how it's panning out. So I assume that implies that multiple teams have interest in him than just the Miami Dolphins.
Mm-hmm.